Hi, I'm Len Edgerly of the Kindle Chronicles podcast. I'm going to talk to you about the Kindle Oasis today and compare it with the Paperwhite and the Voyage. This is going to be a three-part review. The first is a pretty deep dive into the actual screen appearance. There's been talk about the Oasis having a better screen. We'll see if we can see that. Next, I'm going to talk about the ergonomics of the Oasis. That's sort of where the excitement's coming about this new Kindle, because there's some dramatic changes. And the third part is going to be the wife test, where you're going to have a chance to see Darlene's first impressions of the Oasis. And for me, it was a little bit surprising, so I hope it'll be helpful and entertaining for you. Let's get started. These are the three Kindles at the top of the line now. On the left is the Paperwhite, and you can get that Wi-Fi only for $120 with special offers. The Voyage is $200, and that's also special offers, Wi-Fi only. And the Oasis $290, Wi-Fi only, special offers. The screens all have the same resolution, 300 ppi. And there was some discussion at the Amazon briefing that I attended in New York City saying that the Oasis here on the right had better contrast, specifically whiter whites. I think pretty clearly the resolution is similar enough on these three devices that you're not going to spend $170 more to get the Oasis just because it's slightly whiter. Now, that said, I do think I can see a difference. I'm going to see if I can bring in the view here a little closer and see if you can see the difference. And the other thing I'm going to do is turn off the light on my desk so that you're looking at the light. Now, I've got each of them set at the same font, same book, and at the same brightness. They're all on maximum screen brightness. What I'm looking in with my naked eye, as opposed to looking through the camera, I see a slightly more white background on the Oasis than I do on the Voyage. And on the Paperwhite, if you compare that with the Oasis, I think it's a little bit more pronounced that the white on the Oasis is noticeably whiter than what you see on the Paperwhite. You get one thing that's important to know in terms of the screens is that if you do have a Voyage and you use the auto brightness setting, which you can see there, that's not available on the Oasis. If you go into the brightness screen on the Oasis, you're not going to see the auto setting. You just see the bar, and if you tap and hold, you go to the maximum, or if you tap and hold here, you go to the minimum. So if that auto brightness is something that you like a lot, you might want to stick with the Voyage, because on the Oasis that doesn't exist. So I think in terms of the screen comparisons, I think Amazon has gotten pretty close to perfection on how the screens look in terms of the clarity of the type, and there's these three top Kindles are very similar on that dimension. So if you're going to spend $170 more to get the new Oasis, it's going to be for a different reason, and that's what we'll talk about next. Ergonomics is a fascinating art, and the feel of these three Kindles shows that it really matters, the decisions that the design people make, especially on something that's as intimate as an e-reader. And as Amazon says, the goal has been to make them basically disappear so that you're going right into the story when you're reading. They each have different solutions to that challenge, and we'll take a look at them now. The most basic part of ergonomics when it comes to e-readers is the weight. And in the weight department, the three Kindles we're looking at have noticeable differences. The Paperwhite weighs about 2 ounces more than the Voyage, and the Voyage weighs about 2 ounces more than the new Oasis. Beyond that, the main feature that Amazon has taken different strategies to is the turning of the page. And when it comes to the Paperwhite, let's move looking at the Paperwhite itself, there are no physical mechanisms outside of the screen to advance the page on the Paperwhite. It's all done on the screen itself. There's kind of a big tap zone here, so if I tap anywhere in this area, it's going to go to the next page. If I tap over here on the margin, it's going to go to the previous page. The other two Kindles have that same ability to move the page by tapping the screen. There were buttons on the old Kindles, and some of them, on the first one, the buttons were so big and easy to tap that people were inadvertently switching pages, and that caused some gnashing of teeth. So there was a move away on the touch from having, and the paperweight from having physical buttons. On the Voyage, there was a return to physical ability to move the pages, and there are these kind of press areas on the side of the Voyage, and you can see them there on each side. There's a long one here for next page, and there's a little dot for previous page. The Voyage has a flat screen. There's no recess to the screen, and these squeeze areas simply exist on the same plane as the screen. It's not an actual physical button that you can see. It's somewhat of a pleasing mechanism. When you press it, you feel a little haptic response. But you have to get it just right. And a disadvantage of this is that if you're reading at night and you can't see these indications, you're not really sure where to squeeze in order to go to the next page or the previous page. The Oasis solves this with a return to good old-fashioned buttons. And you can see here it's actually a raised button, and it has a very nice feel to it. In other words, you press it and it acts like the way you expect a button to act, and it goes to the next page. And then if you do the previous page, it does the same thing. Now, these exist only on one side, so if you're reading with your right hand, that's great. But what about if you're reading with your left hand? Well, that's one of the neat tricks of the Oasis. You just turn it around, and it reorients itself to the fact that you're holding it with your left hand, and now the same button, the top button, will turn the next page, and the bottom button will turn the previous page. Now you can change the designation of the buttons, and in fact last night when I was reading in bed, it seemed easier to have my thumb on the lower button so that I could kind of cradle the Kindle in a more kind of upright position for reading in bed. And so I switched it, so now I've switched it back, but it was very easy in the settings to say if I hit this bottom button, that's the next page button, not the previous page button. If you remember the buttons of old, and they have finally gotten the button, I think, just about right. It's a nice size. It's naturally placed for the thumb, and it has a great feel to it, and I think that's one of the big ergonomic advantages of the Oasis. Now, the other one, and I think this gets into sort of the magic of design, the Lab 126 design people must have had a lot of fun with this. The first time I saw this Kindle, and I think when anybody sees it, the fact that it's off-center is very striking, and it just makes the point that, we've seen a lot of Kindles. This is the 7th generation Kindle, and they've all been pretty similar. It's a screen centered in a case with improvements and this and that. And so when the Oasis arrives, it just looks different because of that configuration. I think it looks kind of striking, kind of bold. It's a rule of thirds in photos. You like things not to be exactly centered. But the real payoff is in how it feels, because if you're holding it without its case, first of all, your fingers land. I'm not sure how to show this. Okay, so here on my fingers, they land right on this kind of place where the fat part of the Oasis meets the thin part, and so it's a nice kind of a groove for the fingers to be in. And then in addition, the weight of it is, the weight is all kind of in your hand. This part of the Oasis just seems weightless. So that results, there's not sort of a tugging on your wrist with the Oasis. It's lighter to begin with, and the way the weight is distributed makes it just very easy to hold. I found last night when I was reading before falling asleep that I did switch from one side to the other a lot. And the fact that it switches around instantaneously just makes that kind of fun. And I sometimes will hold it like with two hands, but the one-handed holding of a book or an e-reader, I think, is something that it was very smart to design into. Now, the last ergonomic breakthrough on the Oasis involves the case, and the story of it's intriguing because when they got the Oasis down to this thin device with this little weight, they had to get the battery and everything into this part of the device. And on its own, this has 2 weeks of use on the battery. So they didn't want to put a Kindle out that had that little battery life. I mean, we're used to charging iPhones and things every night, but 2 weeks, that's just not enough battery life for a Kindle when it's been known for having such great battery life. So that's where they came up with this idea of a case that actually has the ability to charge the Kindle itself. And the putting of them together, you can see where those 5 posts line up, but the real lineup is done magnetically, and they just kind of snug right together as soon as they get close, and then you've got an attractive case. If you want to read, you can fold it over. I actually find myself knowing how comfortable it is to read with one hand when it's not in the case. Last night I found myself just taking the case off and reading it that way. But certainly if you're going to a coffee shop or something, you might take the case. The way the charger works is if you have the cover attached to the Kindle, but the USB is not plugged into current, then what you're seeing is that the Kindle is being charged from the cover. So you get the charging sign there. The cover is at 85% charge and is basically sending its charge to the Kindle when they're attached without USB power to it. If I plug it into power, now what you see is there's a charge symbol on the cover. So it's being charged and the Kindle itself is being charged, and they're both being charged by the USB. So whatever the current's coming from your charger, both are being charged at the same time. And then if you remove the charger, you see that the charging is now happening for the Kindle itself from the cover, but the cover is sort of giving up its charge. It's not getting any extra charge. The part of the Oasis that I'm not exactly sure I love yet is this basic design of having the Kindle Oasis separate from the cover. And it goes together beautifully, it feels nice, but when it comes to the idea of charging a cover and a Kindle, in the past, you had one thing. You had a Kindle and there was a charger, you knew how much battery life was left, and it was simple. Now, you've got two things to think about. How much battery life is in the cover? How much is in the Kindle? When they go together, the cover's charging the Kindle. And then you plug in, it's charging both of them. Or if you just plug in the Kindle without the cover, it's only charging the Kindle. I don't think this is an insurmountable amount of complexity, but it's one that I haven't quite gotten my mind around yet. And it leads me to imagine, or perhaps hope for, that Amazon might at some point sell the Oasis without the cover. It would certainly be fine for my use because I generally read at night. I have a charger right there by the bed, so if it gets close to the 2 weeks of battery life on the device itself, that's going to be fine. I just plug it in. And if I go somewhere to a coffee shop or read outside, that's my other way of using a Kindle. I'll get a case like this, which I've had for my voyage. The Oasis is actually a little fat to fit in this one, but something that just gives it a little protection would be fine. And if you did that, you could have a lot, I'm sure it would eliminate a lot of cost in making it, and so instead of $290 for the Wi-Fi only, maybe it gets down to be closer to $200, which is what the Voyage costs. So that might be something that's out in the future, and in the meanwhile, I may just learn how to figure out the charging of the cover and the Kindle separately, and it certainly is a very attractive ergonomic package. Next, we'll have the wife test. That's my wife, Darlene, who's a quilter. We're going to go into her quilting studio and see her first reactions to the Kindle Oasis. Okay, we're going to give you your first look at the Kindle Oasis, and we're here in your studio, by the way. This is what you worked on yesterday, the fish.
Uh-huh.
And how's it coming?
It's coming very well. Just has a few more changes than in the background, so yeah.
All right.
My parrotfish.
Well,
okay.
Pick it up, the Oasis.
Okay.
And tell me how it feels.
Ooh, I like this thing on the side. Oh, wow. That's really nice. It feels great in your hand. It's really small. And like your finger is right where the button is. So that is just perfect. Ooh, so how do I turn it on?
At the top?
At the top, maybe
I think it's on. Just tap on a book.
Oh, no, it just turned around so then I can go this way. So just tap on a book. Okay, and then I'm going to turn the pages.
Do you like the buttons?
Yeah. The last thing I had that has buttons on, you had to push a lot harder.
The Voyage.
Right. Was that? No, I didn't have the Voyage. It was before that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, an earlier one, but there was a button one.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah,
you've been reading
nice.
on a paperwhite. Why don't you get your paperwhite and see how it
how it
feel
compares?
a little heavier. How does that? How do those two compare?
Oh yeah, this is much heavier. And when you are holding it in one hand, which I usually is, well, first of all, for this one, you have to reach out to touch it. And I've been noticing since I knew this was coming, when I'm in bed reading, that I'll just, and it'll feel really heavy like this in my hand. And this isn't going to do that because it's weighted to where I'm holding it. So I really, really like that better. And it's much, much lighter than this.
Okay, big question.
Yeah.
Is the Oasis worth $170 more than the Paperwhite?
Well, it depends on if you can afford it. It depends on how much you read. This is the first Kindle since the Paperwhite that I've been excited about. And when you even told me about it, before I ever touched it, I knew I wanted it, which is, I haven't felt that way about anything else. But it's really great. Yeah, I would recommend this to everybody. That, it's just wonderful.